Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. This is the beautiful Sunday afternoon, April 3rd. I am here today. I know you're wondering, that doesn't look like Joe Sanfilippo. No worries. This is not Joe Sanfilippo. This is a much, much better version. Trust me on that one. This actually, my friends, is Joy Kelly. And Joy Kelly is not only a good friend of mine, but she was a longtime colleague of mine in Bettendorf School District. And Joy currently serves as the head of schools for the Regina Catholic Educational Center. And so she's going to be joining me tonight because she's filling in for Mr. Joe Sanfilippo that I think he's out playing or something, maybe some basketball game or something today with his son. Can't believe that. I mean, family time on a Sunday. What's wrong with you, Sanfilippo? But anyway, he'll be traveling tonight. So Joy will be filling in. So we're super excited about that. So Joy, I'm going to turn over to you to kind of maybe introduce yourself a little bit. And then I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this, I don't know, this little retreat thing we had this weekend, and then we'll take it from there, okay?
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Joy Kelly. I am a school leader here in Iowa City, Iowa, home to the University of Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah, right. I have the privilege of serving as the head of school for the student, staff, and families at Regina Catholic Education Center. And in my more than 25 years of leadership experience, I have been blessed to serve in both the public and the parochial school system. So I really, really enjoy what I'm doing. Some of the challenges that I face in a public school versus parochial school, some are very, very similar and some are just very different. But what is common about both is that parents really love and care about their kids. They want the best for their children, regardless whatever the situation or the institution they're attending. And staff is committed, and they are committed to doing their very best. And a lot has been asked of them in a short amount of time, especially these last 2 years. I know people use the term pivot a lot in the last 2 years. I tend to think of it more as whiplash. But I have, one of my things is I just think it's really important as school leaders that we do our very best to make sure that every student and staff member is seen and heard and that they are valued as part of a school community. And that takes everyone doing that. And that's why it's so essential to build that capacity in other people so that everybody is a leader in our school systems. We just came off of a retreat. I actually just walked in the door about 15 minutes ago from Chicago. We gathered Friday night for a lot of fellowship and nice meal. Of course, anything involves Jimmy will involve good eats. So we had that's right. We had a really nice meal. For me personally, it was a great opportunity. One of my children lives in Chicago and she joined us. So that was super fun to have her. And then Saturday all day, it was a group of educational leaders from all over the country in all kinds of different school settings. And we spent the day together on Saturday, really kind of leaning into and digging a little bit deeper about what it means to be a school leader and what's the work that we face and what are the challenges. But I think the thing for me that was so inspiring and rejuvenating and so important is to be in a room with people who have been experiencing this whiplash and challenges in their districts or their school systems, but the passion about students and staff and wanting to give their very best permeated throughout the entire day. And that was really just a super opportunity.
Well, thank you, Joy. If you're just now joining us on the weekly show with Jimmy and Joy, it's actually going to be the weekly show with Jimmy and Joy tonight. So if you are just joining us, we'd love for you to share us where you're coming from tonight, who you are, what your role is in school. And as we always say, if you have an interest in joining us in the studio, just let us know. Jump in. If you have a topic that you would like Joy and I to kind of talk about, right? Just share it in there, a problem of practice, maybe an issue you're dealing with in your schools. Just drop it in the Dropbox there. We'll chat about it. And if you want to jump in the studio or someone else would like to jump in to comment about it, we'd love to hear that. So that is awesome. Joy, I am surprised. You mentioned your daughter, Elizabeth, but you have like 5 kids, right?
I do.
Talk about just the importance of family and the work that you do and some of the struggles that come with that, because I think a lot of our audience members do struggle with that, right? That balance, or what we like to talk about, life fit, because we're all in a different life fit. But there's a lot of guilt that comes with that sometimes because how much time we invest in our students and our staff. And again, I was reminded this weekend when someone said to me again, which I think has happened probably to all of us as a school leader at some point, when our kids come up to us and say, I feel like you spend more time with other kids or talking about other kids or spending your time, giving your time to other kids than you do to your own children, mom or dad. And that one can sting a little bit. So
sure.
we want to talk a little bit about that, because as a mother, I mean, let's be honest, 5 kids, and that's not easy to do, right? And they're like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah. So we're in birthday rollover right now. So my children now are 27, 26, 25. My youngest son turned 23 yesterday, and my youngest daughter will be 22 here in a couple months. So, I started in school leadership actually. My oldest was 4 months old when I became principal, and ironically, my first principal's job was at Regina. I was the principal at Regina Junior Senior High School for 4 years. I essentially had a baby every year I was there, and eventually you figure out, well, this is what I'm paying in childcare, and this is how much I'm earning, and made the decision, and was very blessed to be able to go home for a couple of years, or about three and a half years with my children. And I really love that opportunity. So my children, have always known me as a school administrator their whole lives, and it is a balancing act. And sometimes I feel like I've done it really well, and other times I feel like not so well. But I also think for any administrators out there listening, or teachers, I can go over to the school right now, and there's going to be teachers in there working on their stuff for this week. And it's a Sunday afternoon. And one of the things I tell my staff, and I mean this sincerely, is I want them to look as forward to come to work on Monday as they do going home on Friday. But I need them to look more forward to going home on Friday. It is so essential to make sure that we are having whatever the relationships are among family, friends, extended family. I'm back in the community where 3 of my brothers live, and just the opportunity to be able to see them a little bit more often has been great. But my kids would probably tell you, certainly through childhood, is, the biggest thing they probably remember about my school leadership is the number of kids would give rides home to, or they'd have to wait for me, until I finish with a parent conversation or a student or a staff. And so there's some waiting around on that. But I do think the benefit that my kids also experienced is they saw all different walks of life, and they know no matter what somebody's journey is or what somebody's story is, I'm going to love them no matter what. I might not always approve of the choices or the decisions people make, but I've always felt it's like a huge, responsibility to make sure that I think we live in a culture right now that deals a lot with shame. And I always think there's a big difference between guilt and shame. Guilt, everybody has had. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't done that. Oh gosh, I just wish, I would have made a different decision. Everybody has that. Shame for me is very different. Shame is, I feel so bad about myself. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure I'm worthy of good things happening to me. And that is a terrible message. So if you don't hear anything else that I say tonight, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, a principal, a teacher, really don't say shame on you, or that's shameful, or you should be ashamed of yourself. Those are words that stick with a kid forever. And everybody is going to make decisions that we're not necessarily going to be happy with, but to be able to engage in conversations and say, look, and Jimmy, you and I have had this a lot when we deal with student discipline. The most important thing I always say when I'm finished is, when we're done talking today and you walk out of my office, this event is over. I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset at you. You have a fresh start with me. I want you to learn from this, file it under experience, and move on. And I think that is a gift, and it's very freeing. And, really at the core of it is forgiveness, self-forgiveness, lack of judgment, which now in my work, when I'm back in the Catholic school setting, my public school friends always joke, because I, would frequently walk out of my office and get, like, at the end of the day, okay, I'm going to say goodbye to all of God's children, and once in a while they say, you aren't in public school. I said, yeah, I know. Now I can say it out loud and it doesn't matter. But I do that is when people say, what's your mantra? That is a mantra I have all the time, is if I'm upset, or I, feel like myself kind of getting triggered, no matter who's at the other side of the table or who's on the other end of the phone, I am internally saying to myself, all of God's children. And more often than not, that's in reference to adults.
Yeah. Hey, Joy, it's a really interesting point you made there, just for a second. If you're just now joining us, we got Joy Kelly here with us tonight, who is a school administrator in the state of Iowa. And, I think it's also important. I'll come back and talk about this in a second. Just this idea, I was thinking as you were talking, and as I'm looking at our audience here, just kind of commenting, is this idea between, I often wonder, just this role of male leaders and female leaders and the challenge face, right? So we'll come back and talk about that in a little bit.
Because our female leader listeners out there are really having a reaction right now. I can tell you
Yes,
that.
right. That's okay. So hey, it's important that we talk about these things, right? And
Right,
that's what the
right.
show's about, right? To hear people's perspectives and to give people to talk about these things that are important. But I want you to go back and just say it one more time about the idea of Monday and Friday. Say it again for our audience
Sure.
members, because that's such a great point. And then I want to come back and talk to our audience a little bit just about this whole notion of the challenges that we face as school leaders. And
Right.
then we'll take on part B, which is male leader, female leader. I don't know why
Right.
I just thought I want to talk about that now. Okay.
Interesting. So the part
Excited
about
again?
staff, and I think, I think we would be completely fooling ourselves if we don't recognize that when we give way too much in one area, some other area is going to suffer. And at the retreat this weekend, and people are kind of talking about the amount of time dedicated, like how do you divide your time and so forth. And I look at it a little bit differently. I don't necessarily look at how my time is divided, but I think my emotional energy is where I really kind of look to see, because you can put a lot of emotion and heart and everything. And even yesterday, which was a fantastic day, I was tired last night. It was emotional throughout the day. It was exhilarating. It was reflective. It was challenging, but it was tiring. And so, one of the things that I think is so important when we're dealing with staff, and I don't care if it's a teacher, a coach, another fellow administrator, a paraeducator, the secretaries who are on the firing line a lot, they're on that first line of defense, or that front line. We have to make sure that we are creating a culture where people look as forward to coming to work on Monday as they do going home on Friday.
Yeah.
But the thing I really try to emphasize to my staff is that I need them looking more forward to going home on Friday. Like if they don't get away, step away, rejuvenate, really kind of disconnect. And I'm not great about it. I'm getting better because I recognize that you can't stay in that mode at all times, because eventually then your responses kind of start to suffer. You start to get like overwhelmed by, oh, I got to do that, I got to do that. And if you're in that mode all the time, it just interferes with, you know, the things that make you peaceful. And I think probably for me, what I'm starting to become more aware of, in especially like last 5 to 7 years, when you're a school leader, you're, at least for me, I'll say for myself, I have felt very heavily that my sense of peace really is dependent on the behavior of other people, and trying to strike a balance between whether it's a student who has a behavior issue, a staff member who does something, because we can't talk about it. And so people make all kinds of judgments, assumptions, and so forth. And when your sense of peace is dependent on that, boy, you better make sure you're finding peaceful times in other ways. And that's why the weekends or, breaks or whatever it is, just it's really important to set a time to disconnect, be away, and really enjoy the other people in your life.
Yeah. I love that, you talk about that emotional toll, right? And when people always ask me, Jimmy, what was the hardest part about becoming an administrator? I always say I never realized, and I certainly underestimated, but I could have never predicted the emotional toll that this position will take on an individual. It literally takes everything out of you, right? When you're invested that much in a student, or invested that much in a family, or your staff, or just the profession in general, it's hard not to take it personally when we feel like we're letting people down, or when we're failing and those types of things. But also with all the different issues that we deal with, right? Like,
Right.
we're constantly lending an ear, we're constantly giving advice, we're constantly giving a shoulder to cry on, whatever it is that we're giving other people. And we're constantly trying to navigate that and assure people and comfort people and be compassionate, be empathetic. And then I wonder, but who's doing that for the school leader, right? Doing that for the school leader. And so I remember when I was adjuncting there for Drake University, I'd always say to the students, look, I'll do the very best I can to try to, paint a clear picture, to talk about all the trials and tribulations, the challenges and the joys that you will face and experience. But the one thing I'll never be able to do is to simulate the emotional toll that this job will take on you. I cannot simulate what you will feel when someone looks at you and says, because of you, my child doesn't want to come to school. Because of you, you ruined my child's 4.0, or because of you, or some student who's angry at you and says, I don't think you care about me. Those things over time just begin to kind of, it's almost like it's like death by 1,000 cuts a little bit, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but that emotional component is just really, really strong. So
Well, and in order to navigate those kind of conversations, you really have to have an emotional maturity, because it is very easy to get wounded. It is very easy to take things personally. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older or I'm aging, but I'm really learning that, look, you know what? I know what my truth is. I know who I am. I know the efforts and the energies and so forth that I give to people. I know my heart, and I just think that people can, whatever judgments people make, some of it's going to be made. They don't know me. But I also feel like we're living in a time right now where people don't necessarily want to get to know. We have all this noise going on all over, whether it's, prosecuting, preaching, politicizing. I mean, that's kind of the world that people are living in, and people are going at one another and so forth. And I kind of look at that and say, I don't want to be a part of that. And so even when I'm in that situation, I'm consistently telling myself, be peaceful, because wherever they're coming from, there's something going on in their own life. And I always try to give it the benefit of the doubt and just assume that even if I disagree with somebody, I have to assume that they are doing and saying what they think is best, even if I disagree. And so really, that's why it's so important to be proactive. Like teachers, I think, Jimmy, you and I both have had this conversation, more and more people are reluctant to pick up the phone and call parents. And I try to do a lot of modeling with people about why that's so important, because the deal is you got to get ahead of it. But we have to lead with a generous assessment of their children. If we call and say, hey, I'm Miss Kelly and I teach social studies and I have John in class, and he just comes in and lays his head down and doesn't do any work, and I don't know what to do about it, and I can't help him. Well, where does that put with a parent, versus if I call and say, hey, this is Miss Kelly, I've got John in social studies, and up to this point, he's really been interactive in class. He's really been generous with his time with his classmates and helping them. And I just have noticed a change. And I guess I wonder if there's something going on in my class that maybe you think I need to know about, or if there's something going on with John that I can help with. No matter what, I'm just looking for you for some guidance about what's the best way to help your son right now. Very different reaction from the parent on the other end.
Well, I love the comments that are coming in tonight. Joy, I don't know what's going on, because first of all, we never mentioned that you were going to be on the show. And then I look up and what do I see? Danny Alt is in the house tonight. Terry Goodall is in the house tonight.
I love
These
it.
are amazing, amazing people and dear, dear friends of ours who we just had the great fortune of working with them over the years. So thank you so much for jumping in tonight, everyone. For everybody else who's here tonight, thank you so much. We have Joy Kelly here, the author of Handle with Care. And so if you have not had a chance to pick up that book and check it out, it's pretty powerful, and I think you'll enjoy it. So thank you again. So the question of the audience tonight, if you are interested to respond to this, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But how many people on here tonight have had their own children in their own building? Talk a little bit about that, the challenges that come with having your own children in your own building. What are the benefits of that? Not just the challenges, but there's also a lot of benefits of having your kids in the building as well. Joy and I both had that luxury for many years. So audience members, if you have comments in there, if you want to talk about being a parent in your own children's school, jump into the studio with us. Talk to us a little bit about your experience there. And you, quite frankly, you can talk about anything you want. But right now we're talking about that. But before we do that, as you're thinking about your comments, maybe you'd like to share with us, Joy, I want to go back to this idea that you just shared about this partnership with Parents Right. And again, it's a reminder, when I think of the word partnership, I always go back and think of the idea of, well, partnerships aren't just going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Partnerships really come from the foundation of relationships, right? But it also it requires an intentionality on our part, I believe. Right. This whole idea of the intentionality of reaching out to a parent, the intentionality of calling a parent, not just because of an issue with a student, but reaching out to a parent and having a conversation because you're seeking some input, or ask him to be a part of a committee, or invite him into the building, whatever it happens to be, but just to come to visit the school, but to be a true partner, right? Because I think we hear this word a lot, partnership. But sometimes I wonder, is it really a partnership, or we just like to use that word, and what voice do they really have in that? And so I think there's intentionality on it. But I'm going to take just a quick pause here because I want to look to see if anyone, Jim Witchman, is in the house talking about yes.
I love Jim says my daughter thinks there should be a support group for children of school administrators.
Yes, Jeff,
Amen.
we should start that.
Amen.
We should create our own YouTube channel for young people whose parents are their administrators and their parents, right? And it's hard really to say, hey, I'm going to talk to you tonight as your dad, not as principal. Well,
right.
Either way, you're still the principal, right? And they know that. And so, but anyway,
so, Jimmy,
Joe, you had 5 kids go through your system and through your school.
Right. So a couple of things I would say. First of all, when we're talking about partnerships with parents, that starts from day one with the interaction their children have with us. Before our parents even arrive on the scene, whether it's a first parent meeting, phone call, or whatever else, kids are sharing what their interactions are with their school administrators, and that's why I can stress anything, just the importance of getting to know students and know them by name, pronounce them accurately. I cannot say how important that is. And being able to get I'd be in the hallways a lot, and I am still like, hey, remind me your first name, please. I'm trying to learn all the names in my new school system. But when you can call them by name, there's a connection there. And also then you see them at their activities. One of the things that I think people have always appreciated about both of us, Jimmy, and school leadership is we're at their stuff, and we always have, and we go to those things because we want to be supported. We want to have, the students have those opportunities and to shine. But it also means that we see them in the hallway the next day. Hey, you played beautifully last night. That was such a great concert. You sang beautifully. Hey, that was a great catch whatever it is. So when kids start to have those experiences, and even when you need to do correction, so, you're in a school system that doesn't allow hats, I just see too many schools. When I go into schools, there's a big sign, for example, on the library, no food allowed, big capital, bold, printed, exclamation point, which is like, why can't we just say, in order to provide a clean and orderly learning environment for you, we would respectfully ask that no food be brought into the cafeteria or into the library. Like, that is just a different way to say things with the same message, but it's also saying, look, you're young people. We're going to treat you like people who can manage the expectations because we're sharing that with you. But my 5 kids going through, I think they probably would all 5 say a different experience. I had, when my 3 were finished with high school, I had 2 or 3 years with my 2 younger ones, Michael and Caroline. But I had an opportunity that came along that I was given some serious consideration to. This might have been like 2015, maybe 15 maybe. And I thought, well, I kind of see, and this is kind of where you get a pulse. So, Michael was home first, and I said, hey, I just want to talk to you about something. And he was going to be a senior. That's what it was. And it was like in the spring of his junior year. And I said, hey, Michael, I just, I don't know how you feel about it, but this opportunity's kind of come along. I just want to know what you think. He goes, you're kidding, right? You're not really going to leave my senior year, are you? I said, nope, not if you don't. He said, have you asked Caroline yet? And I said, nope, she hasn't been home yet. And I brought Caroline. She gets home. I put the dinner in front of her. I say, hey, by the way, just kind of looking at it. I said, what do you thought? She goes, is this a joke? Is this a joke? I said, no. So I think for the most part, my kids loved having me there. I loved having them there. I think what became hard is discipline issues, especially when I couldn't talk and people would say all these kinds of things. They had to just kind of sit there, and they didn't know anything. That was the hardest thing. People would be saying things to them, and then they'd say, I don't know, you probably know more than I do, because we would never tell our kids anything because it wasn't a need to know. But for me, when all was said and done, and people would ask me after my youngest was graduated, hey, how's it being an empty nester? I didn't have near an issue being an empty nester, but it was a big adjustment not having one of my own children in the building. I loved it. I just am so grateful for that opportunity and the opportunities my kids had at Bettendorf, the relationships they had with staff and with coaches and other administrators. I'm just very grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joy. Right now, we're talking about the benefits and the challenges of being a parent and the administrator in the school in which your children go to. So, it's funny, even when it comes to co-curriculars, right? Athletics or theater or drama or music or whatever happens to be the case. It's, I always worried about my kids in the sense of, of course we want everybody, and we understand there's pressures that come with that too, right?
Right.
That even from their experiences of pressure, because they don't also want to show the perception of favoritism. So
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like they overcompensate, that they're actually harder on that because of the fact they worry that somehow there'll be a perception of, well, you're the only reason your kid plays is because, well, his dad's the principal or whatever happens to be the case, right? And that is so unfair. And that's one of the probably the biggest challenges I know for at least my kids. So, I still remember having a couple conversations, is you're going to have to be, and so do you, Joy, is you're going to have to be better than everyone else and leave no doubt. So when you're playing, no one's questioning that you're only playing because of this or that. But I also don't want you to be harder on my kid. It's not fair to them that you're paranoid about that or worry about that then you don't do it. So you overcompensate the other way. So these are all sorts of challenges. So if you have a challenge or benefit that you'd like to share, if you've had that experience of having your kids in your school, please take time to share that in the chat box right now, if you don't mind. We're about halfway through the show, but I'll let Joy comment here. But I would like to anyway take on this conversation about, let's just talk a little bit about males versus female leadership and the challenges that come with that on either side. And I'll be the first to say it. And maybe, and again,
this ought to be good.
I feel like I'm sexist here because I'm not. I'll just say this. I think it's harder to be a female leader than it is to be a male leader for so many reasons. And I want to see if people agree with that or disagree. And number one, the first thing is, I just think from the perspective of female leaders, just the easy one to me, when you're a mother and trying to balance all that. But imagine being a single mother and trying to down. And again, it'd be just as challenging for a single father. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be something about mothers and that all the other roles that mothers have to play and balance, and trying to balance that from being a female leader versus a male leader. So Joy, I'll let you take that one on.
Well, I would say it's not, when you say I feel like it's harder for females than for males, the data says it is. When there's all kinds of research out there and people have done their doctorates and their dissertations on, particularly in Iowa, I'll take Iowa, which is where I live, why women are not pursuing leadership. And I would venture to guess we're going to see that data becoming even more slanted, but also elevated on the male side. Jimmy, we talked yesterday, 1 in 7 teachers are leaving the teaching profession, or 1 in 5 teachers leaving the teaching profession, 1 in 7 administrators are leaving. That we're going to be on a crisis because people don't want these jobs, and a lot of people don't necessarily want these jobs. And I think it's so important that we continue to emphasize how important these jobs are, but also, I told the group yesterday that back in like 2018-19, we had a workshop that was actually brought to Bettendorf to our administrators, and it was really good. But the last activity of the day, or the last question of the day was, I choose to be an administrator because, or I choose to be an educator because. And I didn't bat an eye, and I immediately wrote down and I said, I choose to be an educator because it's my most effective way to minister to other people. I do think educators, school leadership, it's a form of ministry because we have the ability and the capacity to influence people in a way that in other professions just simply don't have that opportunity. With those opportunities comes a lot of responsibility, though, and you're navigating situations that, we've dealt with situations that nobody would have thought that would even be dealing with. Much is being asked of schools and much is being asked of school leaders. So I do think, we'd be naive to say, hey, we're just a little bit in a culture still where women, the perception is they have to work twice as hard to be perceived as half as good. I can't say that I've necessarily lived that. I do think I would have probably been challenged more, whether it's decisions or the way I communicated something, or in that regard. I do think sometimes, not often, but sometimes there's some pushback, because it comes from me as a female, that maybe other people, and I would say particularly some males, don't want that message coming from a female. But I haven't run into it a lot, so I'm grateful for that. But either way, though, you have to engage in those conversations too, because when you get sort of this reaction to say, can you help me why you're having the reaction you're having? Well, they're not going to say, well, I don't want to listen to a woman tell me this. But when you say, can you tell me, this is a very strong reaction, can you help me understand why? And it's still, it opens up more communication. So whether it's even conscious, I think that's the other thing, is I think sometimes it's not even conscious on the part of other people. I don't look at myself as a female administrator. I look at myself as a school leader, and I am an administrator much like I'm a parent. You know, I talk to the kids like they're my own kids. I love them like they're my own kids. I have expectations of them like they're my own kids. So I can't say that I've necessarily had that experience, but I know other women. It looks like some people are indicating that in the chat too.
Mm-hmm. Joy, let me ask you, when you said something there and you talked about sometimes in terms of taking, let's just say, I'm going to use the word taking directives.
Mm-hmm.
But is it true, or are there, of course, there's always everything, right? I'm sure there's experiences of that, but is it also concerning that sometimes it's hard for a female to direct other females? Does that create issues sometimes too? In other words, is there sometimes, you know, we hear this thing sometimes, man, if it's a male being strong, oh, he's a strong leader.
Right.
But let a female do that, and oh, that's, you know, we're throwing out B words now, right? We're throwing out B words on a female because they're a strong leader.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But I will say this, like, so when I was hired at Bettendorf in 2003, I was the first female administrator at Bettendorf High School, you know, nearly 1,600 student body in the state of Iowa. And it's like, I wrap my brain around that and think that's crazy. 2003 was the first high school administrator, you know, hired. I was the first female principal at Bettendorf. But so when it comes to other women, I do think, and I remember vividly feeling this when I started at Bettendorf, I don't think there was so much a question like, who does she think she is? Or like, how is she going to do this? And why is she as a female? I think the fact that I had 5 children under the age of 7 when I started there, you know, between 7 and 2, when I started at Bettendorf, I think there were questions like, how is this going to work? How is this lady going to have 5 kids and be a school administrator?
Right. But they wouldn't ask the male that, right?
Correct.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And so I do remember experiencing that.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
right.
Right.
And I remember experiencing that. And then the thing is, I could be kind of chip on my shoulder or whatever, but you know, much like even now, I'm being kind of these things that are being questioned or wondered what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and whatever. I'm just same thing I did then. I keep my chin up and just do the work. The work is what has to be done. And I can't spend a lot of time or emotional energy trying to appease people through their, you know, questions or wonderments, or especially when they don't even know me. I don't really have any problem with somebody who, you can disagree with me. I'm going to make more than my share of mistakes. You can question me, you can ask, but I tell the staff up front how to give me feedback. I can tell you right now, anybody who leads with, I'm wondering about, have you thought of, I'm concerned about, this doesn't feel right because I'm worried. Any of those things, fine. You come in and say, you know, this is a bunch of crap and you're out of line, and that's not the way to give me feedback. And so you have to teach people how to give you feedback. I don't mind when people come and give me feedback and say, I disagree with you and here's why. And then I think, okay, I got to rethink that a little bit. What's in line, what's not. What is troubling to me is when people make those kinds of statements, or she doesn't know what she's doing, or he doesn't know what he's doing, and they make no effort to even get to know you. So they don't see you as this person who's more than a school leader. You know, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm an aunt, I'm a friend, I'm a, you know, I have all kinds of different roles I serve in. I happen to be a school leader, but there's a lot to Joy Kelly other than being an educational leader.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Betty Jo, because I've been watching your comments, Betty Jo. I'd love for you to jump in the studio with us. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, so please don't hesitate. But we're going to go ahead and put the link in here, Betty Jo. If you'd love to jump in, we'd love to have you hear your thoughts. Anybody who's right now currently a school leader who has children in their building, or just to talk about and reflect on or make comments about anything that we've talked about tonight at this point, we would love to have you jump in and join us. I was thinking this one time, Joy, is, again, I was in a school and we were talking just about this whole idea. I was just heartbroken because this teacher was really, really, really frustrated because, again, I think it's important for parents to have these experiences. I still worry sometimes that we as school leaders sacrifice a lot of moments. That's what I'll say. Moments that our children are having that we miss them. And again, it kind of goes back to where we started this conversation. Oh, you'll go to those kids' events, but you don't even go to you missed all my events, right? And so I still feel like we should just put I don't know what you'd call it, but we should allow all educators, doesn't matter what your role is in schools, but we should come up with a way that no parent should ever have to miss their own children's events because of work, right? So in other words, hey, first day of kindergarten, we talked about, we had this already, Joy,
Yeah.
but we said we expect you and hope that you will be your child's first day of school. We hope that you never miss your child's third grade music concert. We hope that you never miss your fifth grade student's track meet. We hope, and if that's the case, you have our permission to get someone to cover for you. If you can't, come talk to us. We'll help you cover it, or we'll cover it ourselves. We'll figure that out. And I can just see how many hurt feelings and how many times people felt devalued or give me. But now that I'm asking you for something, we play the, oh, well, the policy doesn't allow that. What?
Right.
I can't go to my son's, and we've been waiting all our lives, and my daughter's playing the state tennis tournament, and you're telling me I can't go because I don't have a personal day? Well, you should have saved those, Joy. You should have saved them. Yeah, you predicted that, right?
Right.
And those are the types of things that hurts our profession, right? And that
it is.
The other thing, we can't have it both ways, right? And so I just struggle with that. That's a completely just gets to me, right?
This takes me back to my childhood, to be honest with you. Kind of my journey, my story, but I was raised by a single mother. There's 7 of us. And honestly, my mom, most of the like basketball games, volleyball games, whatever, 6 o'clock. What time did my mom start work? 6 o'clock, but a few times a year she'd go to her boss. She was a bartender. She'd go to her boss and say, hey, I just want to get to a couple, like she'd come for like the first quarter of a game, be there. The game would start at 6 o'clock and she'd leave by 6:30 to get on to work. And I have to tell you, I never once felt like, oh yeah, everybody else's parents are here. My mom's not here. So I think I view it a little bit differently because I grew up with that. My mom couldn't be at everything. And I also think, as much as I don't want to miss my kids' stuff, you know that. I mean, I drive all over Croatia and all over the country for my son's basketball and get back in time to go to work, because I don't want to miss it. That's my choice. But none of my kids are going to suffer if I miss one of the games. But I agree with you completely that the importance of it is that they have the opportunity, they have the option, they have leaders who are saying to them, hey, we'll work this out with you. We'll make sure you get there. And I think that's really important. The other side of it is like, if I can't get to everything, this also is an opportunity. When we say we're school communities, then let's be a community. So other parents can give my kids a ride, or other parents can, hey, do you need any money for concession stand or whatever? It's not that I expect anybody to do that, but I just think this is an opportunity for us. And that's one of the things when you look at the Search Institute, the 30 things that indicate sort of a healthy and productive life that young people are going to have. One of them is that they have adults other than their parents who really care about them and who really love them. And I think we have an opportunity when we say, like, to classroom teachers, all of these students are all of our students, whether they're on our roster or not. I think we just have a time, and it's a critical time to, as a community and as a culture and as a society, say, these are all our kids. All of these kids, my heart like sank when I realized about the shooting in Sacramento last night, which is where my daughter actually was last night, down in Sacramento until 10:30 p.m. And the shooting that happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, what has happened? Where have we gotten to the point that young people just really don't see any other options? And part of that is we all have a responsibility to love all of these kids, whether they're our own or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I just feel like I have to take a pause there just for a second and just reflect on all the comments that are being shared and the words that you're sharing right now. So really appreciate that. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. And again, I'm going to continue to ask our audience if there are problems of practice, issues that you're dealing with in your school, throw them on here and we'll certainly talk about those as well. We would appreciate that. We would love to talk about those things. But right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about just this idea. Joe, you talked about the retreat and so forth. And one of the things that this weekend was just so powerful was just us coming together as a community. And it's a reminder again how powerful it is. And you know what it was for me? It was a reminder how much I still don't know. Yeah. It's crazy, right? Like, I'm 55 years old. I was a principal for 22 years. I've been in education for over 30. And yet I sit in a room yesterday all day and listen to leaders, and I'm still learning and still learning and still learning. And again, when it comes to school leadership, I just wish that, again, how do we help our leaders not feel like they're alone? How do we help our leaders not feel like they're burned out? And it's not just for obviously our school administrators, but also our teachers. But there's something even seems more isolating for the school leader than it does for the current teacher. And at least that's my perspective, and that's my lens that I'm coming at from today. So I go back to this whole idea of being intentional then, right? Because we talk about all the time that we can have, every school has average, right? All schools have average. And but at the end of the day, the question is, what are we doing about the average? What are we doing about these things? And when I say we, I don't mean like the school principal. I mean we as a community. You just mentioned this whole idea of community. I'm a believer that everybody's responsible for the culture and climate of the school. I'm a believer that everybody's responsible for the teaching and learning. Everybody's responsible for the attendance. We're all responsible for this, and yet we still continue to create cultures where people expect one individual to solve all our problems. Well, you're the building principal. Yeah, but I'm one person, right? But again, it goes back to the leader's responsibility. Then how do we cultivate that community? How do we empower them? How do we build their capacity? How do we give them a voice? How do we encourage? How do we support? How do we inspire people to want to lead with us? And so this intentionality behind it of, we don't want average to become our standard. And so that's not good. And so one of the things I was thinking about is I kind of go back to this idea of, if we are isolated, if we do feel alone, and we could be more intentional, then, so I'm asking building principals right now, if you're feeling that way, then look around your community. How many schools are around your community? How many times have you been intentional reaching out? How have we been intentional to reach out to all leaders and say, hey, I'm a leader in this building, and I was just wondering if by any chance you would want to work with me to create this opportunity for the leaders in this area to come together just to talk about the issues we're facing, the things we're doing. How many times have we been intentional to invite other leaders to our building to say, hey, I'd love to have you come here. I'm inviting 5, 6, 8, 10 leaders, and I'd love to show you some things we're doing in our buildings, but I'd also like to talk to you about some problems of practice and just kind of bend your ear and get perspective. And so I'm bringing this idea of being intentional now. I'm trying to bring it from a leadership perspective. And at the end of the day, so we don't find ourselves isolated and feel like we have to figure this out by ourselves. Because for me, yesterday was just so powerful, because again, it's just a reminder how much we still don't know when it comes to school leadership. And that's why it's so darn complex, because the number of skill sets and tool sets and the knowledge that it takes to lead a school, I don't know how anybody does it, right? And it's crazy. So anyway, the idea of being intentional. So I was just thinking about that right now. What can we do as school leaders? What can you do? Are there any ideas or the things that school leaders that are on here tonight that you have done that has been beneficial? Things that you've done intentionally, areas that you've identified, or things that you've seen that you thought, here's a great way of, if you're feeling alone or feeling isolated as a school leader, here's one thing maybe to consider that might help.
Right. So, and I think I probably have a little bit of a different perspective in that I'm in my first year at the school that I am. But I realized very, very quickly there is an institutional knowledge, there is a history there. Even though I was there in the late 90s, but there are a lot of things that have taken place and a history behind them and a rationale and so forth that I'm not possibly going to know that. So I did develop a leadership council, and people were so gracious, pre-K through 12. My campus is a PK through 12 campus, but I have people on that committee who have a skill set, have a wisdom, have an investment about all of the kids at Regina, and I'm learning from them. So yes, I'm the leader, but I really feel like in order to be a really effective leader, I need to listen to people who are living in that world. I think that's where school leaders have to be a little careful that we're not kind of making decisions. We have to be careful not to be like divorce judges. We make decisions or proclamations, and people just have to live with them. That we need to make sure that we're in a partnership about leadership. If we're saying we can't do it by ourselves and it's so isolating, then what are we doing to create sort of a pool of people that are invested not just in the success of their students and their children, but the entire institution? And so that's been one thing that's been helpful. I did notice Ashley on here said that,
Yeah,
a little bit. Right. But I'm just kind of curious, Ashley, I think you're welcome to join. I don't know how that all works, but even if you just respond, I'm curious what level of a principal you are. You elementary, middle, or high? I think elementary, there's a different challenge there when you're an elementary principal because there's usually just the one, and you don't have a team, and that's an example I'd give. Like, you got to develop a team of leaders around you to help with that. I just think that's really important.
I've seen Ashley and Sonia on here before, Joy, and I'm still trying to entice them to jump in here with us. I would love to hear your voice. I would love to hear their thoughts. And quite frankly, I'm just getting tired of talking. So,
hi, Ashley. Thanks for joining.
There's no way Jimmy Cos getting tired of talking. I'm getting tired of talking. But,
well, Ashley's got a beautiful little one on her shoulder there in that picture. That's adorable. Yeah, so she's an elementary principal, which is sort of what I suspected. And I do think that makes a difference. And I think if you're in a small high school and you're the only administrator, but all the more reason, I think I've been in 2 different systems were athletic conferences. And this is one thing I'd recommend, to take advantage of your athletic conferences. Maybe see if the principals in your athletic conference, if you're elementary principal, hey, can we, and now with Zoom and Google Meet and everything, it's really much easier to kind of connect. Now you're talking about things that are common in similar communities. So that's one thing that might be helpful.
I'm laughing at Ashley. She says, if I had my makeup and my hair done, I'd jump in. Actually, you can jump in and just have your voice. You don't need to come on camera. So, Ashley, would you come on and just talk? We don't need to turn the camera on. So, Ashley, look at this face. Look at this. See? I mean, come on. This is, God gave me this face. That's all I got, people. That's all I got. So, but no, Ashley, seriously, I just love your comment. You're like, I did this as an instructional coach. I did this as a tech, whatever. Why haven't I done it as a principal? So good. So maybe this is just a nudge, right? A friendly nudge, a friendly reminder. Yes, that's the idea of being intentional, right? Establish the situation, see something that's going on, and just say, you know what? Yeah, what am I doing about that? And what can I do about that? And again, it doesn't mean that I have to do all the work with it, but I can be the person who ignites that conversation, invite people, right? And I still remember, I'm just so passionate about student leadership teams. And I remember bringing other student leadership teams from other schools to our school, right? Because somebody's got to do it. If not, we all just kind of sit around and nothing happens. I remember taking representatives of students to our MAC Principals Conference and watching how that evolves and really empowering students in that. But, AP conferences, right? Again, having 16 schools from the region bring their staffs, right? Their AP teachers, and they loved it, right? Because again, teachers love, and not only that, we know that teachers will invest from teachers as well. So those are all powerful things. So, oh my goodness, what is going on here for me? Colin Wicken, holy cow, it's like a little reunion here. So these are just people that we worked with over the years, and just
but I want to say something about
reminder how blessed we are, right? So
right, but also right,
but I was just going to say the connections, right? And that's what I love about this work is it is a small world, right? And the connections that are made, it's just amazing, right? And that's just what I love about our profession, probably more than any other profession.
And that's one of the things that I just feel so grateful for is, the people that I've worked with, secretaries, other administrators, teachers along the line. But that administrative team, I've always been blessed to be a part of team that first and foremost care about each other. We know the work is serious, but we don't take it so serious we don't have fun. I mean, that's so important. And just how much fun we had working with Colin, and now Jimmy's in a different area. I'm in a different area. Colin's in a different building. And my hope and my prayer is that we're taking what we learned from each other and the kind of cultures we want that we've experienced, and we're cultivating those in our new places. And that's what I feel like I really have a responsibility and kind of a privilege to be able to try and do where I am now.
Awesome. Joy, this weekend we talked a little bit about trading time, right? And for the last 10 minutes you're here as we're on the show, I just because it kind of fits in with being intentional, right? Because I think sometimes we convince ourselves that we don't have time, and we know we have busy lives. We know we have a lot going on, but I still think it's important, right? Because to me, the time is still about investment. I still think it's the greatest gift we can give other people is our gift of time. And so how can we be intentional in that? But I think there's so often that we convince ourselves that we don't have time to do certain things. But we also know that when we don't take time to do certain things, we end up paying for that on the back end. And quite frankly, it ends up taking a lot more time. And we also know that when it takes time on the back end, it's usually not fun. It's stressful. We worry about it. Might keep us up at night, having even some anxiety. We might have hurt some feelings, right? We might have caused some wounds that are going to be really, oh my gosh. Now you
I
threw
just
me
saw
off.
it too.
What is going on? I think there's
Murmur.
a conspiracy here. Somebody did something here. Please forgive
Mariah.
me, audience. Please forgive me. Just give me one moment. Hi, Miha. I love you, baby. My daughter's just jumped in, so that's
And
awesome.
I want to say this. We went to dinner last night, a group of 20 some people, and no offense to everybody else, and certainly no offense to you, Jimmy, but on the way over there, I was most looking forward to spending time with AJ and Mariah and Yvonne. So I was hoping I was like, oh, I'll get to sit with them. And I got there and the table was full and I had to go down to the other end and trying to make room for other people. And I thought, oh, so I went back to the other end thinking I'll sit on the very end, the opposite of the kids. And all of a sudden you said, Joy, just come over here. And you moved down and all the other people moved down. So I got to sit with your kids. But this is an example of what I'm saying about the relationship. Mariah's jumping on there. First of all, she wants to support you. Secondly, she just knows I love her to pieces. And we joke all the time, between the two of us, we have 8 children. And I love your kids like I love my own and how important they are to me. But that comes from a result of sort of the heartache we've experienced together, the joys we've experienced together, the problem solving we've done together, the challenges. But it's always comes back to still making sure that family is the most important.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I this. It'd say, "Hey, will you go talk to Mariah for me?" Or Kevin, will you go
Oh
talk
yeah.
to AJ for me? Or Colin, can you just go encourage AJ and tell him he really can do math for me, buddy? I mean, again,
Colin, can you run to Adolph's?
yeah, we're asking other people to help parent our children, right? Because the reality of it is, it's like anything else, and we can make this relationship to even as educators or people who maybe are authors or people who speak, right? It's hard to be a prophet in your own land. It's sometimes hard to be a prophet in your own household, even, right? It's because it is mom and dad's voice, and and eventually it's like someday you look down and think, oh my God, I'm kind of starting to sound like my mom and dad, and maybe that is our influence. And again, it kind of goes back to the leadership lesson: is short term versus long term, because we often don't see our results in the short term as teachers, right? We teach and we don't get. I mean, that's why I think, again, I'm going to be biased again. This is where I feel badly for our elementary teachers, right? In the sense that oftentimes they don't get to reap those same rewards in the short term. But man, if our pre-K and our K teachers get our kids off to a great start, that takes them all the way. And so when that kid walks across that stage, it's a reminder, yeah, I feel great that our high school teachers had something to do with that. And we know we championed for them and all those things. But let's not forget about our middle school teachers and our kindergarten teachers, because going back to this idea of community, we all play a role in that, and we should all be celebrating in that. And I still think one of the biggest challenges that we see is you get the high school graduation, and maybe it's been a long year or maybe it's the timing, but God, I wish I just see more teachers, and quite frankly, more elementary teachers and middle school teachers, because they are the reason, as much as our parents are, that they're walking across that stage, right? Everybody played a role in that to get that kid there. So, it's a good reminder for us as high school people, and I was a high school person all my life, is that, hey, those kids that are national merit finalists, or those kids that are, that are winning these awards, or these kids that are being successful in theater and music. Man, there was a music teacher back here in 6th grade or 7th grade, people that were part of that as well, that ignited them, that inspired them. And so it's, I love that whole idea of just community, and how can we just be really intentional, just reminding ourselves this all the time, that we all play a role. And at the end of the day, we're all responsible for the culture and climate of our schools, and we're all responsible for the success of our children.
Right.
And we have to remember that.
So I've had my superintendent certificate since 2015 and have not used it, obviously, until now. And when I was contacted about this position, I really, was not interested. I loved what I was doing at Bettendorf. I always thought I'd retire from there and was having a great experience. And then I thought, well, maybe I need to kind of stop and listen a little bit. And one of the reasons that I ended up kind of taking this leap of faith, literally, was the joy that I knew I would have, because I wasn't going to be leaving kids. I didn't want to go to a central office. I didn't want to get further removed from kids. So I literally can be in a 3-year-old bunny room and 10 minutes later be in an AP physics classroom, because it's one campus. And to see that progression, and to see that you go into these classrooms, our elementary teachers are phenomenal, and go in to see the type of learning, the type of grouping that they're doing, the type of challenges that they're giving students, is just it's really great to see. But one of the things that's really been a really gift for them is that they do have a common time that they get together. They have a common planning time, and that makes a world of difference. So especially for anybody who's new out there, like new leaders or new teachers, especially. I know people think this is crazy when I say this, but I envy those people who are just starting out in their career, even if they started during COVID, because it was not that long ago that we were all handed a set of keys and said good luck, and everybody would be congenial. How was your weekend? Welcome, so happy to see you. Hey, do you want a cup of coffee? And then go into their classrooms, close the door, and do their own thing. And that's very isolating. When we get to the point that we're more collegial, like my kids did not perform very well in that. Can you and I sit down and talk about this? I think, your kids perform better. There's something you're doing differently, and we're more vulnerable about that. We're not threatened by it. We're not competing about it. So when we can have those conversations, that is very liberating. And so even if you're a new teacher and think, I don't have all the ideas, I don't have these cool resources, I don't even have any experience, you have a room. You can just simply say, hey, I have a room, that we can meet in my room. That's something you have to offer. And so don't be afraid to lean in and really make sure that you are letting other people help you and that you're a part of a team.
Yeah, that is awesome. And of course, it wouldn't end unless we could probably call Joni and ask her to jump in too. These people are angels in our buildings. These are our wonderful, wonderful administrative assistants who took care of us. And let's remind people that this job, principals, cannot be done without the role of our administrative assistants and secretaries and support staff and those who help us lead. So remember, but we need to allow them to help us lead and be a part of that because we can't do it without it. So, hey, Joy, can you believe it? It's already coming to a close here. It went pretty quick.
Wow.
Right? So,
hey, again, can I tell quickly about favorite gift from Joni Bricken? Joni gave me a little tin can wrapped around with Lucy from Snoopy with my 5-cent psychiatrist in. It sits on my desk to this day because in a lot of ways we are vessels for people, and we need to make sure we're giving oxygen to all that is good and trying to extinguish things that just really take away the joy and the thrill and the gift it is to work with people and young people every day. So give oxygen to the good. Oh my gosh, Nicholas. Give oxygen to the good and try to really drown out the noise that really kind of, hurts your spirit. Don't let that happen.
That's right. That's a great way to end. Give oxygen to the good. But I think sometimes even the bad needs a little oxygen too, right? That's kind of how I see it sometimes. So, hey, listen, Joy, thank you so much for jumping in tonight. I'm going to call Joe tonight and say, hey, Joe, you know what? You should take next weekend off too. That's what I was thinking.
I am no Joe Sanfilippo, let me tell you.
Off too, but in all seriousness, thank you, Joy, the author of Handle with Care, my longtime partner, my longtime colleague, my longtime friend, and certainly a blessing in our lives. So thank you all for joining us tonight, for being a part of this conversation. And let's go be the oxygen for the good tomorrow in our schools this week, people. We hope you'll join us again next week on the weekly show with Jimmy and Joe. And again, invite a friend and maybe follow us on the YouTube channel, the weekly show with Jimmy and Joe. Thank you, everyone, again, for jumping in tonight and chatting in the box with us and just being here with us tonight. We are truly, truly grateful, and God bless you and have an amazing week this week. Okay. Take care, everyone.